So, interesting article here on the F1 Chronicle.com concerning Haas and their team principal Ayao Komatsu, a man who has done an incredible job to turn around the fortunes of the team, taking them from effectively last all the way up to potentially 6th this season. They still need some more points. They need to overtake Alpine now, believe it or not, for that 6th place. And a team that is very much on the up. There's very much a feel-good factor. They've got a very young and exciting rookie coming to the team next season in the form of Ollie Behrman. They've got this partnership with Toyota, and they are also a customer of Ferrari, and not just for engines but also for parts of the car. I think they make like the gearbox and some of the suspension and stuff like that. But Komatsu has come out in the media and said that he's not really for these apparent customer team clampdown rules that Formula 1 is trying to implement. Now, this is the first time I've heard this, but let's have a look at what's been said here. Full article on the F1Chronicle.com as always. The boss of F1's smallest team, Haas, has hit out at proposals to limit the way the outfit operates. It is well known that Haas outsources the design and production of many components to Dallara, Ferrari, and now even Toyota. RB is also increasingly reverting to a Haas-type situation, buying as many parts from parent team Red Bull Racing as possible. Rivals Aston Martin, Alpine and Williams, however, are hitting back hard, insisting that all teams should have to design and manufacture more of its own parts. And according to Automotor und Sport, a proposal in the 2026 regulations is that when a customer team like Haas and RB finish 5th or higher in the constructors' standings, that the team then has 3 years to become a full F1 constructor. The rule is not set in stone, but is expected to get a majority vote and push through. It would be a killer for the small teams, said Komatsu. If Formula 1 wants as many teams as possible to be competitive, then we all reject this rule. What better thing could happen to the sport than David winning against Goliath? I don't disagree. The Japanese also thinks that the rule would be pointless. What fan cares whether the gearbox or suspension comes from Ferrari or from us, said Komatsu, who also hit back at the idea that Haas and RB have an unfair advantage. We are credited with nominal equipment value in the budget cap for the components we buy, he said, and it is so high that we have no advantage. Well, interesting, relatively short one there for you guys. I mean, it's an interesting viewpoint. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with what Komatsu's saying by any means, but my counter argument to part of what he's saying there is, well, if there's no advantage to it financially, why are you doing it? It's obviously an advantage financially to do that, and I don't see a problem with that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It is being efficient with the resources and the actual things at your disposal, basically your resources. That's what it's all about. They've got a budget cap. They have to see within that budget cap. They get their engines from Ferrari, they get the gearboxes from Ferrari, the chassis made by Dallara or whatever, so there's a lot of different things going on there, and I have no problem with that. I have no issue with that whatsoever. You go back in the day, people have been doing this for a long time. Customer teams in Formula 1 are nothing new. They are nothing new. Teams often in the past used to buy chassis and buy components and stuff like that from others. It was less prevalent back then. It was only for the really, really small teams that struggled. And some used to outsource it. Didn't HRT get their chassis from Dallara back in the day? One of the new teams in 2010 came in and did that. So it's nothing new. And I feel like with the cost of components right now in Formula 1, it is necessary for a lot of teams to do this. It is very difficult for them to survive, and even more difficult to compete. The alternative scenario here, if you outright ban all teams from buying components from other teams, right, excluding the engines, let's allow the engines, right, because I don't see them changing that. You can't expect there to be 10 teams with 10 different engines that they're all manufacturing in-house or with partners. It's just not going to happen. Even for a team like Haas that has the connection to Toyota just can't magic up an engine. Or they could do, but it wouldn't be very good. It'd be like Honda in 2015, where they just weren't prepared for what they had to do, or underestimated the task in hand, and it's just not gonna. What are RB gonna do? Who are they gonna get theirs from? Williams, Alpine have binned off their engines. They're going for Mercedes engines in 26. It's just not gonna happen. So the engines, they'll stay no matter what. I can't see them banning customer engines because no one's gonna want that. The manufacturer of these engines, Mercedes, Ferrari, they're not going to want that because they supply engines to teams. They make money from that. They make a profit off that, presumably. Otherwise, why would they do it? They're giving their competitors well, not an advantage, but enabling their competitors while making no money. They make money for it, they have to. Not a lot probably, but they make some, I'm sure. But then when it comes to the components, I feel like you then have Haas. Let's say Haas, right? They make their entire car themselves, apart from the engine. That's the one thing they don't. They bolt the engine in. You're going to get Haas being less competitive. You're going to get Haas going back to being the worst team on the grid, and that gap between the front and the back increasing as a result. Who wants that? People might be like, oh, it's funny, look at the Haas, it's at the back of the field again, it's funny, it's like 2021 all over again or whatever. I'm sure people might get some sort of pleasure in that, right? People like that sort of stuff. But from a competition and Formula 1 point of view, it's unhealthy. You want the grid to be as close as possible. And that's what we're seeing right now. The grid is so close now. People talk about like Sauber being miles off the pace, but you know, that the gap between the front and the back is like a couple seconds, if that. You know, you go back through the history of Formula 1, that is tiny. Sometimes you used to get 2 seconds between first and fifth. Senna used to get on pole position sometimes by 1.5 seconds between him and his teammate Alain Prost or Gerhard Berger back in the day. So I feel like Formula 1 would be shooting itself in the foot by doing this if they force it through, but apparently they're thinking about doing it, and I don't like it. I'll be honest, I don't like it. I mean, it depends what they actually limit with this, but if they just say outright, apart from the engines, the only thing you can, buy is that from another team. Apart from that, you're on your own. I feel like that's just going to make the gaps even bigger, and potentially we're going to get teams maybe failing to qualify for races within the 107% rule. We've been there before. The HRTs back in the day, I mentioned them again. They sometimes struggled to qualify for races because they were so disadvantaged financially. And doing this will only increase the gap between the front and the back. So I'm with Komatsu here. I'd be very disappointed if Formula 1 votes this in, but apparently it's expected to pass. So we'll see what happens, because they're finalising the Concord Agreement and the 26 regulations, and they wouldn't bring it in for 25, it's too soon. But for 26, I think they could. And that'd be bad. I think bad. But guys, what do you think about this? Do you think Formula 1 should stop, teams buying components from other teams? Is it giving the small teams an unfair advantage? Do you not like what RB does with Red Bull? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, keep it subscribed to the F1Chronicle.com to see much more content on the pinnacle of motorsport just like this. Like, share, comment, subscribe, ring the bell as well, and we'll see you very soon. Have a good one, guys.